Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that we're late. I am in a hotel in Gallup, New Mexico. It's called El Rancho. So this is El Rancho, and I was just
I've
trying to
been
get
to
a good
Gallup.
connection. I love it.
Yeah, you're near the Navajo Nation.
Yeah. I've never been to this area before.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's totally beautiful. I love the desert heat. I think it's beautiful. I haven't explored too much, but I want to explore further. We just drove through Arizona and that was cool. Also, Emma is behind me whining to add to the atmosphere. Uh, everyone who is tuned in, thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe because YouTube has throttled my YouTube channel into oblivion. And they won't let anyone new see any of my content they like. It's brutal. It's just, and it's whatever. You guys know the story. And Meta too, Instagram, Facebook. They're like, nope, cut off. Too many jabbing comments.
Laughing, but it's not that funny.
No, it's horrible. It gives me
Really?
it's like it totally gives me anxiety and it feels super depressing because we have no control over it. But anyway, everyone watching can help by liking and subscribing and by following Isabella and Kay on Instagram and on Twitter. I put those links down below. And also, if you would like to ask a question or you want me to for sure see a comment, please use the super chat so that I don't miss ya. And without further ado, we have two brave and brilliant women, so much braver than me. Lord, like there's no way in hell that I would have walked into NYC Pride ever in general. Never mind with a poster saying that, well, tell me, let's start at the beginning. And actually, let's start at the very beginning. And perhaps you two can introduce yourselves to people who are not familiar with you, though I'm sure many of you watching are. Isabella, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan, for hosting me and Kay Yang for this debrief. I am a former doula who was indoctrinated into trans ideology in 2016 at a doula training program in Brooklyn, New York. My background is in supporting women in birth, postpartum, coming off hormonal contraceptive. And my work became impossible to do without going along with the trans lexicon and the ideology. And that set me on the path to go deeper and to expose not only trans ideology, but all of the forces that are targeting women, specifically our reproductive capacity, our reproductive health. And so that is what I do now on the Whose Body Is It podcast, and I host masterclasses on my platform. Kay Yang has done 2 classes for my platform, and they have been wildly successful, and we hope that women will continue to learn from all of her knowledge and research. So that is what I get up to these days. And I'll say that I'm a New Yorker. Grew up in Greenwich Village, and so I've had my Pride experiences since I was a little girl.
Awesome. So much good stuff. Super grateful for all that you do. Kay, tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, did you get muted or is that just me?
I can't hear you either.
We can't hear you, Kay.
Oh,
you're back.
There you are. She's being censored.
Silenced again.
Censored, yeah. Megan, thank you for having both me and Isabella. It's really good to be here with both of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kay Yang. I'm the creator of StopFemaleErasure.com, also the Deprogrammer.com, which I started kind of making YouTube videos anonymously over 5 years ago now, and I was going by the handle the Deprogrammer. But actually, when I started using that, it was meant to be for my YouTube videos, and it sort of became the name that everyone started referring to me as. So it sort of became like my my alias when I wasn't using my name. So anyways, that was about 5 years ago. I started making the videos, and I was still not fully speaking out as my whole self, not really telling my whole story, not showing my face. I was still really nervous, really scared about receiving lashback from all the different people that I used to know, people in my life. It's not like I'm completely not worried at all, but I've chosen I just think it's more important, and I'm being more effective now than I was before. And I'm able to say more things and have more credibility and build more relationships with people, using my name and my face. So a lot of what I'm doing is exposing the corporate collusion that's going on behind the trans rights movement, and exposing how the nonprofits are involved in this and the nonprofit industrial complex, because I have a whole huge activist past and organizing past outside of anything to do with this. And I was kind of exposing the nonprofit organizations that are behind pushing the so-called environmental movement, and exposing how it was a lot of major corporations that are involved in the extraction process itself, who were funding some of the big green nonprofits that are said to sort of be like the leaders of fighting the environmental movement. So I was exposing a lot of that and how different communities were being exploited by these big NGOs. And then I had that whole past. And when I started looking into what was going on with the trans agenda, I was able to take that entire analysis that I had from my past and apply it to what was going on now, which was super helpful and has been very helpful for me personally, but also in educating other people about what's going on and how all of these different sectors of society function together as like a moving whole, as different parts of a moving whole leading us down this path. Because a lot of people think, that this is happening for whatever reason. They don't see that it's part of a larger overarching plan. So that's what I'm really trying to expose. I've been exposing the United Nations, researching the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically gender equality, researching how the Sustainable Development Goals are going to affect children and what's being pushed under the guise of gender equality. And recently doing the Great Reset of Motherhood class with Isabella, talking more about the transhumanist aspect of this, of where this agenda is headed, how it's affecting women's rights, our bodies, but specifically our reproductive rights, and kind of exposing where the narrative is going to be taking us and what we need to do to combat it. So yeah, my work is really, I guess, uniquely informed by my personal history working at the LGBT Center, indoctrinating youth in New York public schools, and then later going on to be like a pretty prominent trans rights activist. In the beginning of trans rights activism, it looked a little bit different than what we see now, but I was on the forefront of kind of leading the way, forcing and pushing it into spaces because I thought it was the right thing to do, anyways, I'll stop at that.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, it is really interesting to hear about how one gets into trans activism and how one gets out. And I think it's brave to leave those kinds of movements and ideologies and to change your mind and to admit that you were wrong, or admit that, to come out and say, I learned something new. I saw this for what it was, and this is not right. I mean, there's not actually that many people who are willing to do that. But I mean, so on Sunday, the two of you, well, I saw a tweet from Kay, first of all, and it included a pretty scary video. It definitely gave me anxiety just watching, and I wasn't there, but you were there holding a sign in the midst of a mob of Pride goers. So tell me tell me what the sign said. Tell me what happened. Tell me what you guys got up to in New York at Pride.
Yeah, well, the sign is there. I have a version of it behind me. The sign said "Stop female erasure in language and in law around the world." It said "Defend female sex-based rights." It has a list of some of the names that they've been calling us: bleeder, uterus haver, gestator, all this really dehumanizing stuff. And it says instead of that, it's mother, woman, girl, female is the correct terms for us. So a pretty simple message. And I think maybe we should back up and talk about like sort of how we got going there. Isabella, do you wanna talk about like how we decided to go to Pride and how we found ourselves there?
Yeah, tell me why you made this decision.
Well, I've been in New York for a couple weeks, and Kay was coming down here for an event, and we just thought, let's just take some photos. We have these classes together. Like, it'd be awesome to just like take some good quality photos together. Like, hell, let's go to Washington Square Park. I just kept having a vision of us in Washington Square Park.
Not even knowing that Pride was going on that weekend, not thinking of that. Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, I know it was Pride Month. I mean, it's, how could you forget? But like, I hadn't actually realized that the Pride Parade was going to be on that Sunday during the weekend that we were thinking about getting together. And so, Kay had said, let's like, should we go? And I replied, probably. And so we
started.
Yeah. And so we didn't.
Okay.
We're like, probably. I mean, I guess we're like kind of relevant to whatever is going on there. Like, we should probably do something. But yeah,
I've actually been wanting to go to disrupt the New York City Pride for quite a few years now. It hasn't panned out. I was hoping that anyone would want to come and, pose an alternative message, say like, we don't agree with this. And it hadn't panned out, and that's fine. But I've been really, wanting to go and just say, stop female erasure and stop sexualizing kids. And I feel so strongly about it because of my past and because of how bad this whole thing is getting, of how escalated the whole situation is. So when Isabella said that she was there and wanted to go to Washington Square Park, and I wasn't even knowing that Pride was going on, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll go to Washington Square Park. It'll be great. We'll take some pictures. And then I saw this thing of like, oh, it's Pride this weekend. You think they'll be at Washington Square Park? Like, no, it's not like really on the Pride route. It's just like adjacent. And we're like, oh, there will be people out. We'll just go. We'll hold our signs and we'll talk to people. I'm not scared to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
I enjoy conversation and dialogue, and I know both sides of the argument really intimately. So I actually really like having conversations with people, because a lot of times I can pique them, or at least get them to be completely like, wait, what do I believe?
Yeah.
So we didn't expect it to go the way that it did, but we definitely, we weren't expecting people to be like, yay, thanks for being here. But we definitely weren't expecting what did occur. That was crazy.
You didn't expect people to be celebratory of your message. No. But I mean, it is unfortunate, because you would hope that you could just go there and talk to people, and that people would be willing to engage in conversation. Sorry.
Isabella, you had like a really good conversation for like a long time when we first got there with the young woman.
With the archaeology student?
Oh no, that was not a good conversation.
Oh yeah, okay. The other one.
Funny one.
There was another. Yeah, I
meant productive.
Yeah, one thing that we saw was that there were groups of people. When we were kind of like at our kind of post, we were just holding up signs, and if people wanted to talk to us, they really had to come to us. We weren't in an area that you could just kind of stop along your walk. You had to go up a couple steps and really like. You had to make a distinct effort to talk to us. And so what we saw throughout the day was groups coming over where one person was more interested. Typically, the woman was interested, and she was with other women, or like some of whom had their breasts cut off. Some were with gay men, we saw this repeatedly, where a group would come over and there would be one woman who was, perhaps more interested, more curious. And yeah, I spoke to one woman for a decent amount of time about, men in women's prisons. And she had no idea about the Dana Rivers case. And she seemed, she didn't give me any kind of like facial cues to indicate that she was alarmed or like particularly concerned, but she stayed and she kept, asking more questions, well, how often is this happening? Like, is this frequent? How do we know? Like, you're talking about it like it's a real problem, but like, I've never heard about this. And, do you think do you think men who, what she called trans women should be in solitary confinement? So she was talking, and at no point was it antagonistic. And she ended up, taking stickers from Kay Yang. And so that was awesome. And so, yeah, we had some productive conversations. And, I think what we saw over and over was just the same party line, and if you're patient, which we were, we could have stood there for days, talking, because when you're like well-versed in the language, it's really, it's incredibly gratifying and satisfying to follow the thought experiments all the way through and to get people to either peak or to go home and do their own research. And while I was never a trans rights activist, I was most certainly an ally. So I understand, as like a former, neoliberal feminist, what the, where the empathy is and kind of where the, what they say and what they think. I get it. I had the same thoughts. So yeah, we could have stood there for hours, but we did have some good conversations.
And go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I mean, I think that what a lot of people, trans activists, progressives, people who are on board with this whole movement, I think that they assume that women like us who are opposed to gender identity ideology, and who are defending women's sex-based rights and see this movement as really quite dangerous to women and girls, and obviously who say and believe that we're bigoted and hateful and so on and so forth. I think they assume that we came to our position in like some kind of knee-jerk way. Like, I think that a lot of these people really do believe that we're transphobic, which to them means that you have an irrational hatred towards people who are identifying as transgender. And I mean, I think the reality is for all of us, it sounds like, I mean, I never was a trans activist, but I certainly tried to explore and was open to trying to explore and understanding trans ideology and these ideas. And I tried to make sense of it. And I was in grad school when I was like reading like all sorts of gender theory, and I interviewed and spoke to and engaged with people, and I was not yet super, passionately engaged in this issue. I wasn't yet defending women's sex-based rights. But so I did actually explore both sides, and I came to the conclusion that transgender ideology is total nonsense, total nonsense. And then later came to the conclusion that it was really dangerous and harmful to women and girls.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? Okay.
Well, I want to say something about what you just said as well, is like when I first got involved in trans rights activism, it was nothing like you see it now. And the Trans Women Are Women line hadn't really started yet. And I was thinking like, oh, this whole trans thing, this is how we're going to push back on like these oppressive gender stereotypes and these little boxes that they put us in. And like, I don't feel like a woman. Like, I don't identify with all these stereotypes about women and femininity. And like, that was kind of like how I got sucked in. And then by the time I was like coming out of it, when I had the whole experience with the male friend who was identifying as a woman and had groomed a boy and raped him and all of that, like by the time that happened, the whole like Trans Women Are Women thing had started just like around that same time. And I was seeing male friends of mine start saying that they were a woman, and their whole idea of like being a woman was literally dressing very feminine and provocative and having like casual sex or even doing quote sex work. And then they were saying, yeah, I'm a woman now. And I was like, hold on a second. This is not, this isn't what I thought this was going to be. And if this is where this is going, I don't agree with this anymore. So I wanted to say that. And then I wanted to say, the first person that I spoke to in the park, while Isabella was having this like really great conversation with this young woman, a male came up to me. He was totally feminized. He identified himself as a trans woman to me. He was wearing like a little skirt and skimpy top and stuff. And he thought, you know, he came over kind of a little bit antagonistic, but I immediately was just like very nice to him and like, you know, made sure that he understand that I see him as a human being and like I'm not there to like, you know, try to hurt him or anybody else in any way. And like he kind of softened up right away, but he really wanted to hear what I thought and why I was there. And we had actually a very long conversation and everyone was watching us, mind you, because like Isabella said, like it's not like we went out into the crowd like, hey, we're here to like F shit up. Like that was not what happened. We went being like, okay, we got our signs. If people want to approach us, they can, but we're not forcing anybody to engage with us. We've got like distance between us and everybody else. So we were kind of up on a platform and everyone who was around was watching me talk to this guy. And I wanted them to see that like, yes, I have no problem talking to this person. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't think like he's a terrible person or I can't speak to him just because he's involved in this ideology or whatever. So we were having a really productive conversation, even though like he was saying all kinds of stuff that didn't make sense, but he was listening to me as I was trying to explain things to him. And he was saying, yeah, I care about women's rights. Like, yeah, I care about women and girls. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, let me explain this. So anyways, it was actually his female friends that came over to us and tried to like protect him from me. And only when they came over and started like getting in my face did he be like, yeah, like, I was like, what? I thought we were just having like a really good conversation. Now, all of a sudden, because your friends are like giving me crap or whatever, now you don't want to talk anymore. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to talk to me. You know, but it was amicable and other people came up and men and women. And I want to say while we were up there, I saw a group of women, young women, maybe like 10 of them. They all had their like, you know, their rainbow garb on. They were there to have fun, right? And probably be allies. I don't know. Maybe some of them were lesbian or bi. I don't know. But I saw them like intently like staring at me and Isabella and looking at our signs and reading them over and over again and like whispering to each other and like looking at their phone and like looking up and, you know, I'm like, okay, they're clearly interested. So I like spun my sign around so they could see the other one and they read it and like nodded their heads. And one of the girls was like this.
Nice.
Yeah. And then they all like kind of like started chatting more about it and like going like this, like they agreed. And other women as well. Like I remember there was like 3 sort of like middle-aged Black women that walked by, saw the sign, and I said, you know, it's true. And they were like, like silently like nodding and like hurrying along their way. A lot of people were indicating that they agreed with us, but nobody was saying it verbally. And I think, of course, people were scared to say so.
Of course. And at what point did things start to get violent and, you know, there was a lot of verbal abuse? It seemed very intimidating to me. How did that happen?
Do you want to start the scene?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we were very hot. It was exhausting. You know, we were, I think, in like some kind of, I'll speak for, I was in some kind of like time warp. You know, I didn't know how many hours we had been there. And I had like reached for my phone a couple times. I mean, a couple times when we were up there, I was kind of concerned for like all the eyes, and I think I pretended to be on my phone once or twice. I don't know for what purpose I thought that served, but anyway, I had no idea what time it was, but we were getting hot, and we thought like we're kind of like reaching the end of whatever we're doing here and these conversations, but let's get some good photos. Like, let's go towards the arch, and so to get to the arch from where we were, you have to kind of go towards the center of the park. So you pass the fountain, and then we were on the east side of the park. So you go towards the fountain and you make a right, and you make your way towards the arch. And so we chose to keep our signs up and hold our signs and kind of parade, have our own parade, down, through the arch, and thought maybe there would be some people taking photos of us doing that, catching us through the crowd. There were. Yeah, there were many people kind of turning their heads.
There were girls taking selfies with us in the background.
Yes. Yeah. So I was walking in front of Kay Yang, and from my point of view, I just heard a man screaming at her, and I turned around, and maybe Kay, you can take it from there.
Yeah, so we were walking through the park, and sort of as we approached the fountain, which is like, once you're at the fountain, you're pretty much, it's like 10 feet from the arch, like you're right there, right? So as we approached the fountain, I could hear like some guy yelling at me, and I was like, I'm just gonna ignore him, like whatever, there's lots of people here, like of course some people don't like the sign, obviously. I've been heckled many times before. I was like, whatever, ignore. Right. But then he got like closer and closer, and he was like in my ear, and he tried to grab my arm. And I was like, I like pulled away from him and was like, don't touch me. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't like that I told him not to touch me, of course. So he kept following me, and another man that he was with joined him. The first man, he called me a bitch right away. And I was like, whoa, I was like, excuse me. Do not call me a bitch. You don't walk up to women in a public space and refer to them as bitch. Do not do that. And he, like, at first that kind of like put him in his place a little bit. He was like, oh, like, well, okay, fine. I shouldn't have called you a bitch, but like, this isn't okay. Like, this is transphobic or whatever. And he was like, I'm here with my trans woman. And then that's when the other man was like, yeah, like, I'm here. And I was like, okay, like, so, like, that's fine. What's like,
okay, you can be here. You're here.
That it's a public park. That's great. You're here. What? So, and then they started telling me again, saying that I was a bitch. I'm like, okay. Oh, and I want to say, while this was happening, a group of women, young women, maybe, I don't know how old they were, but maybe like early 20s, possibly still in their teens, kind of walked by. And when I said to that man, I was like, you don't walk up to a woman and call a bitch or whatever. And like, this one girl and her group of friends were like, yeah, that's right, period. Like, don't call women bitch. Like, so there was some women like stick up for me in that moment. I don't know where they went after that, but I do remember that, them saying that. And then, so the the feminized man who was like identifying himself as a trans woman, he started telling me that I'm misogynistic and trying to like transplain misogyny to me. And I was just like, misogyny is male perpetrated violence against females. And I just kept repeating that because they were like yelling at me at this point. So I just was saying the same thing. And then he was like, you're a cis bitch. And like, you're a misogynist, and cis women are misogynist against trans women. And it kind of like, this is like, he was starting to yell like really in my face. I'm like, okay, this guy is escalated, but we're leaving anyways. Like, we were literally in the middle of leaving. So I wasn't thinking it was going to like go much further, but because they were like right there accosting me, I was like, and telling me what misogyny was, I was like, misogyny is two men screaming in my face, calling me a bitch. How dare you? How dare you? Because I said two men. And so then he started screaming like, trans women belong here. And I was like, well, lesbian and bisexual women belong here too. And that made him very angry as well. So he just started screaming, trans women belong, trans women belong. And so when he did that, everybody like heard him, and a group of people like instantly formed, because how many people were already there. They like instantly formed and started like coming to his defense, right? Even though these two men were bigger than me and both screamed, and I'm a big woman, and they're bigger than me, screaming at me. My hands are like completely occupied with the sign, but they had to come to his defense because he's a trans woman and I'm an evil woman, apparently. So that's kind of like how it all started. And go ahead, Megan.
How many people were there around?
What do you think?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was like, it went from 0 to 100 so quick. It was like there was just this one and then two men screaming at Kayang. And then all of a sudden it was a circle of like, I mean, instantly like 5 people deep, like 5 people, like completely closed in, like complete circle. And you know, I mean, I think at the most there were probably like 10 people deep. So if you take that all the way around, I mean, maybe 100. Like it was a lot of people.
It was a lot. And then outside the people who were like intentionally crowding around me, there was literally like hundreds, if not thousands of people in like every direction, because there were so many people downtown for the parade.
So were you guys pretty scared?
I was nervous, but I also was thinking like we're leaving, like we're already leaving. So I wasn't thinking it was going to like, I don't know what I was thinking, quite frankly, because it just happened so quickly. And really what I was thinking was like, where is Isabella? Because it got so crowded so quickly, like I couldn't see her. And I was like just trying to sort of like make sure that I could see everything that was around me. And then I knew like, okay, this is crazy. There's nothing we can't stop it now. All we can do is like try to leave without it getting crazier. So and I was like completely surrounded. So the only way that I would have been able to leave is to like force myself through people. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that, because the minute I start trying to push my way through, maybe they're going to push me. Right. So I'm like, I'm just going to stand here until they like realize that I'm literally doing nothing to them, and that they're like getting nothing out of this. Like they're not going to get a response from me. I'm not like gonna like, you know, like they're getting nothing out of it.
Well, and you're not getting riled up. You're not getting hateful. I mean, again, it's the assumption is that you two are, and me also, all of us women, you know, are hateful bigots, and that we are, you know, enraged at these people, you know, maybe because that's how they feel towards us. So they assume the feeling's mutual. Yes. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually saying to them, like, don't do that. Like, don't do this. Why are you doing this? Like, you don't need to act like this. Like, you don't need to do this. I was like, I'm not here. I can't remember what I was saying, but I was trying to, you know, actively say in the moment, like, this, what you're doing is wrong, because it was wrong. And they were totally under the influence of like mob groupthink. Like they really were.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. It seemed like people got, I mean, I watched that video many times over, and I was just trying to figure out how these people got into this state of insane anger and rage and violence, you know, physically going at you even. And because I don't relate to that. Like I can't imagine being out in public and feeling so much rage at an individual that I wanted to attack them in that way, unless they were attacking me, you know, unless I was defending myself. And actually more likely I would react if I felt defensive of somebody else. I feel like if it were me, I would probably not do anything, turn around, walk away, say something, you know, try to calm things down a little bit maybe. What do you think what do you think happened there? I mean, how did these people get into this state of like frothing, rageful, hateful anger?
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Isabella?
Sure. Yeah. I have thoughts on that, but I also want to just point out at how, like, particularly abusive the gay couple was. That one of them, one of whom identified as a woman, pretends to be a
Was
woman.
this, sorry to interrupt you, but were these the guys in the video that
Yes.
the blonde and the
Yes.
other man?
The guy with the glasses.
I think that
screaming.
blonde is a woman.
Yeah.
A lot of people think the blonde man is a woman. I saw so many
Yes.
comments from people saying this is a woman. I'm like, no,
The voice is a very manly voice.
No, and you see his, like, the veins pop out. I've never seen a woman's veins pop out of her neck and get up in another woman's face. I mean, it's clearly male behavior. But what was really disturbing, that I was there, and so I was hearing and seeing what I was seeing. But then the footage also showed, stuff that I didn't pick up on when it was happening. And you can see in the footage that, well, I didn't know that he had grabbed Kei Yang's arm. And so when I learned that, I was like, oh, wow, it's even worse than I thought. Because you see, after she's getting surrounded, you see multiple people kick and grab her. And at one point, the guy with the glasses kind of says, you see his hand kind of go, try to, like, he's incited this violence. He's already touched Kei Yang. And then he wants to say, oh, just, you've gone a little too far, to the other people who are committing violence. He can commit the violence against her. But when the other people do it, it's maybe gone too far, and what that says to me is, like, he thinks he's in control, but he's clearly not. And you see his boyfriend, the blonde man, say, you hear there were women cheering, fuck her up, fuck her up, fuck her up. And the blonde woman goes, sorry, here we go. I'm getting it. It's twisted. The blonde man goes, oh, I would if I could.
Oh my God.
Like I would if I could, like that.
Yeah.
And so highly disturbing. But I think people get so disturbed and so enraged because we are shedding light on, like, the deepest kind of, like, self-hatred and internalized misogyny, internalized homophobia. And I think there's so much darkness in confronting, what these people have done to their bodies, the lies that they've told themselves, and to be confronted with embodied women who are literally just, Kei Yang was repeating the words that they were saying to her back to them, and like a mirror. I mean, she really was like an unshakable mirror. And I retreated at that point and was starting to definitely feel afraid, because I am not tall and strong like Kei Yang is, and I don't come up from a background of on the ground activism, and I am not skilled at de-escalating. And so I started to feel desperate, and I started to back up. I started to, like, back up and go forward to create a path, because I thought it was going to turn into a stampede. That was my worst fear, that I was going to get trampled, and we were all going to get trampled accidentally, because people are going to panic. And I was screaming naively to the people behind me, it's not worth it. There are young women in there. It's not worth it. And that kind of, like, voyeuristic, like, ooh, I have to get closer now, was the response that I got. No one, was, like, interested in not engaging. And so, that's when I pulled away, and Kei Yang couldn't see me anymore. And I was looking for cops again, naively. I jumped on a vendor table. There wasn't a single cop in the whole park.
How strange that there were no cops, especially considering that the 2S LGBTQIAA plus community is in a state of emergency right now, and they are in urgent need of millions and millions of dollars in security funding, because they are constantly at risk for real world harm on account of anti-2S LGBTQIA plus hate. So you'd think the cops would come out.
I give you credit for actually saying the acronym.
That's probably the first time I've ever done that. I feel like I've written it over and over and over enough times that I was like, I'm picturing the letters in my brain. I mean, like, and that's something that the propaganda campaign is so good. It's such a good campaign. Like all month leading up to Pride, leading up to this incident, what we saw over and over and over, we saw from the HRC that they issued, I don't know that they have the authority to issue a national state of emergency, but they did nonetheless issue it. Like, wait,
crazy.
is this legal?
We should issue one.
Call in the National Guard.
Oh
Well, no, but really, I know, like, we're laughing, but it's like they're issuing a national state of emergency on account of, hate and attacks on this so-called community of whoever. And, what they're actually referring to, they refer to the legislative assaults in their write-up about this. And what they're referring to is the legislation that's been passed in various red states across America, banning minors from being medically transitioned. So banning giving puberty blockers and hormones to minors. And in some cases, the various states have various different laws. Some of it's just the hormones and puberty blockers. But anyway, for the most part, it's like the puberty blockers, the hormones, the so-called cross-sex, the sex change surgeries, the so-called gender affirming surgeries is what I meant to say. Which, none of that is hateful. That's not a threat, but they're acting like there's like real serious danger. The implication being that there's people out there, people like you, people like, these far right figures who are actively coming after,
like you, Megan.
Yeah, a far right figure like me, Megan Murphy, coming after trans people. And not only is it not true, but there's so much video evidence. If we needed video evidence that the attacks are on women. I mean, we saw what happened to Posey back in March.
Yeah.
This has happened to you. This is the first time this kind of thing has happened.
Yeah, Amy, Souza, and I were talking about that earlier, actually, because we were just kind of like trying to name all the different things that we could remember of women in America being assaulted, let alone women in the rest of the world, but just like talking about in the US, like with April Morrow's hand being broken out in Tacoma, with Gina getting assaulted in Portland and then getting spit on in New York, me getting hit in New York.
There was Maria McLaughlin in the UK way back at the beginning of these women organizing to fight back when Venice Allen organized that meeting. Yeah, and Maria was punched by a man identifying as a trans woman.
I remember that, and I was so upset when I remember being just so devastated by that and freaked out and scared. And I remember just feeling like, oh my God, like I can't, like, who would walk up to a woman of any age, but especially an older woman, and do something like that? And then that's when I was like, this whole agenda is starting to get extremely fascist and totalitarian, because now violence is being done against women in the public square, and we're being criminalized for our beliefs. Yeah. We're being silenced on the internet, so we can't talk online without getting, banned from Twitter and like kicked off everything else. We can't talk in the public square without getting mobbed by people. You can't like go to City Hall and protest without getting spit on. I mean, I don't know.
Right. And because it's not only, women are physically at risk when they speak out about these things. We all know that. I mean, I've always had to get private security. We've always gotten death threats every time we try to plan an event just to speak about these things. And women are never the antagonizers. Women are never the ones going after trans activists to attack them, to shout at them, to anything. It's the other way around in these situations. But beyond that, we are being persecuted, you know, like our free speech rights are being taken away. We are being silenced. We are being threatened with arrest, and being charged with hate crimes or hate speech. You know, that is real. You want to talk about legislative assaults.
You're right.
It's just the reversals are really crazy making.
Yes, the patriarchal reversals, like Mary Daly says. Absolutely. The whole thing is an utter inversion, and for them to be issuing a state of emergency is just the biggest joke ever, especially coming from the Human Rights Campaign, which was co-founded by a literal pervert pedophile, Terry Bean. So I have a whole video about that on my YouTube. Check it out, because their money from the HRC, if you trace it back, it goes back to what's his last name is Holmes. I think his first name's Gary, but Chuck Holmes was his name. He was a gay pornographer who pioneered the whole switch from porn on film, like in a theater, to film on, or to porn on VHS tape. So that switch created this huge market in VHS porn, right? And he also pioneered, he was also like a big pusher of barebacking videos. So that means like males having homosexual sex without any condoms, and was pushing these and making these videos popular during the height of the AIDS crisis. And actually ended up, I think, dying from HIV himself. But all of the money that was amassed through Chuck Holmes' pornography empire was then put into a foundation and left to Terry Bean, who co-founded the Human Rights Campaign. And then Terry Bean has been exposed multiple times in the news, and he had charges brought against him. He actually paid off a child, paid off a minor who he who he molested. And you all can go and look all of this up. It was kept very, very hush hush. It was not given any attention in the media. And like I said, he literally paid off the young, well, now he's a young man, but he was a minor when it occurred. This person, basically, I just want to say that, the Human Rights Campaign, it's not like they're just some benevolent organization. Their money comes from the porn empire. Their co-founder is involved in grooming and abusing children. And then they are such a big funder they were a big funder to the Obama campaign. Terry Bean specifically was. And then the HRC is the largest advocacy group for LGBT issues in the US. And they have a huge revenue that they bring in. So it makes sense that when all this was happening in the media, nobody heard about it.
Well, and that, they're freaking out as their industry is
crumbling.
I hope crumbling, but the being limited, in terms of their ability to transition more kids, to bring more kids into this cult, essentially to profit from these kids.
That's their real emergency that they're talking about. The emergency is that we're getting in the way and foiling their plans.
Right. Yeah. They're freaking out. And they thought they'd won because they had won in a lot of ways. This was a very successful campaign that they ran. And they had almost everybody under their control, except for women. A few difficult women, and I shouldn't even say that, because I keep, I'll say women are fighting back, and, I'll respond to people who are saying, where are all the women on this? Where are all the feminists on this? Why is it only right-wing men who are speaking out about this? And I'll be like, women are fighting back and women have been fighting back. But it's actually true that a lot of women are not only on board, not only have stayed quiet, not only have passively gone along, but are actively fighting. The women who are fighting for their sex-based rights, actively supporting trans activism, actively supporting these trans women or women's slogans. This is so common. This is why I'm reading this tweet, not because it's particularly interesting per se, but the other night, this woman, Brianna Joy Gray, I don't know if I pronounced her name right. She's, you know, she's got a big following. She used to be with The Intercept. She's a co-host at The Hill. And she seems like pretty intelligent. I haven't followed her very closely for very long, but she tweeted about Dylan Mulvaney, who of course is this guy who did this however many days of girlhood shtick on TikTok, where he mocked women and co-opted womanhood in the most insulting and sexist ways.
Children, sick.
Right, dressed up like a little girl on the internet, and claimed that this was him becoming a woman or a girl, I suppose you could say, and got a meeting with Joe Biden and was sponsored by, you know, is essentially getting rich off of all this. Sponsored, of course, by Budweiser.
But he's not a grifter, though. But you know,
no, but
it's grift.
No, of course not. And so this woman, Brianna, tweeted about Dylan, who had posted a video complaining about the harassment that he'd gotten on account of this Budweiser campaign, and complaining that Budweiser didn't stick up for him, which is just like the most ridiculous complaint I could have ever heard or invented myself, considering that not only are none of us are getting corporate sponsors. None of us are getting support from corporations. None of us are getting support from anyone. None of us are getting support from governments, politicians, institutions, NGOs, the HRC. Again, Budweiser, Tampax, and banks across America.
Well, that's because we're not oppressed. If we were oppressed, then we would get all those things.
Oh my God.
If we were true victims, we were truly marginalized. But so she tweets about Dylan. She's honestly so warm and kind. It's no wonder she has the far right frothing at the mouth. If you had to pick teams based purely on warmth and general appeal, no decent person would go with the Petersons of the world. It's why she's seen as a threat. I'll let you guys respond to that. Isabella, what do you think?
That she is seen as a threat. I mean, my first thought is just the insanity of the medicalization part. Like the fact that this man has fought to get silicone breast implants, the same silicone breast implants that are carcinogenic for any human who puts them in their bodies, which are majority women, surprise. Just the insanity of just inversion after inversion. But yeah, I'm I think that what he has going for him is his stature, and it is childlike, for a reason. He's embracing the pedophilic elements of male, specifically male to male attraction, not even male to female, but I think he's really embracing that little girl aesthetic to appeal to men who are not as comfortable, kind of in public with their pedophilic tendencies. So, I think that he's been able to garner attention, because of his size. He's emaciated, and he looks terribly unhealthy. And then all, the kind of the cues that he uses, appropriates girlhood, the high voice, the nail polish, the dress up. And he's almost always depicted like alone, like his videos, he's alone.
That's true.
And I think that perhaps also contributes to like the patheticness he's able to, or the empathy he's able to garner from women all over the world. And, we saw this at Pride. You saw like Kay Yang described, the man who was in the bikini top, who she spoke to for a while, had his, his girl gang come over and defend him. And this is just for absolutely nothing. And I mean, I mean, this is like a kind of a side note, but it's reminding me of, but I was a member of a all-female co-working space in New York like 5-6 years ago, and Hari Neth, who is a male actor who is like also considered like a female model now at this point, but it's a man. I remember showing up to this co-working space and women just completely fawning and running to him, and his stature and his aesthetic reminds me of Dylan Mulvaney, just the emaciated kind of girlish, wafy model type. And yeah, so I think the fact that he's always depicted alone, that he's emaciated, and that he's just so desperate to, he appears to be in the video so desperate to get things right. Like it's this like hero's journey for him. Like, will he ever, choose the perfect outfit or get the likes from the guys, like the crush at school? Like it's so.
Yeah. When will the boys ask him out? That was a complaint. He was sad, like he still hasn't gotten his first kiss as a trans woman, trans girl, whatever he's describing himself as, well, yeah, it is embarrassing. I mean, I can't imagine behaving in such a pathetic way in public, being so desperate. But yeah, like this sad sack, like, and it, and it is sad. I don't know how true or sincere it is, but it is sad to go through all of that, to, cut up your body to such an extreme extent and then not be able to achieve what you wish to achieve, which is to be a girl or a woman. You're still a man. You're just a mutilated man. And in this case, like you say, Isabella, very sick. And that's, I'm glad you made that point, because you do notice a lot of these younger men, these young men who transition, who look like they're anorexic, and it's clearly about trying to avoid puberty, obviously to avoid looking like men, but also to avoid looking like adults, I think.
Yes. And just selling their, the whole thing with Dylan, so many things to say about that, but just this idea that they're selling to people that you can actually become the opposite sex, that you can get enough surgeries and enough like hormones and makeup and whatever to pass as the opposite sex. It's ridiculous. They're selling something that is not attainable, and it's impossible. And it's more of what we already are familiar with, right? They have been selling this. They've been selling something to women, an unattainable beauty standards since the beginning of advertising. So this is just a new way for them to market to women, but also now they can play on men's insecurities and feminine men's insecurities and homosexual men's insecurities and everyone's porn addictions. They can play to your fetish, like anything that they can capitalize on. And this is an endless money-making machine that they've created with this whole trans thing. Because now I'm worried about what's going to happen with a lot of these young people who are detransitioning. And I've met some really amazing young female detransitioners who I just feel so bad for their story and what they've had to go through. And it's amazing that they're speaking out. It's very powerful. But I worry, like, how many detransitioners are we going to have in the future? And then what's going to be, a new market developed to sell them some pharmaceuticals to help them with whatever problems have been created in them because of the hormones and the surgeries and the mental and emotional abuse that they went through. They're going to be medicalized for life. They're going to need therapy for life. They're going to need like
antidepressants, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Sex pills.
Can I add to that? I was thinking like, the kind of, and Jennifer Law talks about the intersection and the new market created for the fertility industry to kind of like prey on the young people, even the children who don't even have sperm or egg yet, to kind of use their, to preserve their fertility. If they're having, their balls cut off or their uteruses removed. But I'm like, to the point of the detrans women specifically, like what happens when you remove the parts of you that you later want, you're desperate to, you feel desperate to conceive and to have children. Like I fear that those women like that there will be some women who are blinded by, you know, they're so desperate for their desire and to kind of correct what they've done that they end up exploiting, that they still end up exploiting women. And you see this with the women who, you know, are the pregnant men who are still in the cult, who then exploit other women for their ability to produce breast milk. Like, I think we're going to be seeing, like, definitely women who are still in the cult, but also women who have left the cult who are, you know, it's just this continued exploitation because, you know, you want to give your, let's just say you want to give your baby breast milk, like you're pregnant, but you don't have your own breasts anymore. You want to give your baby breast milk. Who is that going to come? That has to come from another woman. That
comes from Bill Gates' bio milk. That comes from the synthetic milk that they're creating. There's actually
that too.
Huge competition going on right now between biopharmaceutical companies to see who can create the first synthetic breast milk. And a lot of them say that they already have them. So this is something that's going to be a new market being created. They're going to be pushing these synthetic breast milks. Who knows what's in them? Doesn't matter. We shouldn't trust them anyways, no matter what's in it. But yeah, it just goes to show how this attack on our female bodies and our female reproductive rights is directly connected to this push for the biopharmaceutical transhumanist technology. It's so clear at this point. And actually, I had a good conversation about this in the park after the scene of me like getting jostled and all that. Like, we were, even after all that, we were still having conversations with people. And some people were coming up, even though they didn't agree with us, and saying that they also didn't agree with what just happened, and sort of like wanting to discuss, like, well, why are you here? Like, tell us, we want to know like what you're doing. And there were like 3 young men who were all like feminized, and I ended up getting into a conversation with them about artificial womb technology and explaining to them that, you know, if artificial womb technology, if ectogenesis becomes available, or even partial ectogenesis, like partial, development of a fetus outside the womb, if that happens, we're going to be put into a position where, reproductive rights and abortion rights are absolutely going to be affected, because once there's ectogenesis, the fetus is always viable. Right. And if the fetus is always viable, they can push to force you to put the fetus into an artificial womb tech. And then who does the baby belong to? The state, the corporation who owns the devices. And then what happens to you as the non-consenting, reluctant now mother of a child who was gestated in a machine and is now owned by the state? Like, where does that leave you as a woman? Like, we're coming into some really strange ethical territory here, and it's creepy. But also, in bringing that conversation up to these guys, like, you could just see their whole like brains kind of like melting. And some women that came by, they thought again that I was like, because they already thought that I was like this, because I'm a transphobic bigot and stuff, like, oh, you're against abortion and stuff. And they started getting angry, and I was like explaining it to them. And then it was just kind of like they didn't even know what to think about that. And they also probably didn't fully understand what I was talking about. But it was clear that it kind of like stopped them in their tracks. And this is the thing with all the propaganda. They're just delivering all of this nonsense and planting it right into people's minds. And then they're not hearing any alternative points of view.
Yeah.
No.
And so when they get confronted with these alternative points that challenge them, they're like, I don't know how to respond. There's no programming for that.
It was also just nonsensical. So like when I was holding up the keep prison single sex sign, a woman yelled at me, "Oh, so you love prison? Why do you love prison like that?" Like provoking me. "Oh, you love prisons, don't you?" And I'm like, how did you get from how did you get from point A to point? I mean, but it's all the like abolish prison propaganda that's like, people really think that like that you can just like abolish. I mean, it's total insane, like progressive propaganda. Like I mean, it's just
Right.
it's wild.
And yeah, and they are just in these bubbles where they're seeing these things said over and over and over again, these mantras said over and over and over again, and they're never exposed to alternate points of views. They're told, not to listen and to stay away from alternate points of views because they're evil and dangerous and bigoted and akin to Nazis.
Well, my friends literally would tell me not to read things from certain people, or like, why are you reading this blog, or like, I would actually have people policing what I was looking at and saying like, oh, well, don't you know, like, you should be careful, like, reading stuff from her because she's a swerve. Like, I was told that about Cherry Smiley,
Right.
who, as for the audience, is an Indigenous feminist that Isabella interviewed. So you should go and watch her interview, actually. But yeah, other friends of mine, other Indigenous friends, told me not to listen to her and other women, like contemporaries of hers. So I think like that's a real thing. It's not.
I had that too. It was like I had that too. It's like, oh, you can't read that. She's a TERF. And I remember gasping. Like I remember not about Cherry, about another author. But I was like, oh no, her. Oh God, thank you for telling me.
Yeah,
I will police my thoughts accordingly.
Yes, and I was disappointed. I was like, oh, that's such a bummer. It was actually Holly Grigsball. Yeah. Anyway, it was, yeah. So I had that experience too, but it is like a trigger. It truly, we didn't get into this yet, but you definitely, it was pretty upsetting to see the mind control, like in full action. I mean, yes. like cue the word, cue the sign. It's, it's frightening. It's really frightening.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Megan.
Nope, go ahead. You go ahead.
I'll be quick and then I'll let you go. The people in the crowd, they didn't even know what I was saying. They didn't know what my sign said. They didn't know what Isabella's sign said. They didn't know who we were, why we were there. They were just like kind of going with the crowd. They were getting worked up. And I think like a lot of it comes from being on devices all the time. Like when you are used to being, you're disembodied, right? You're in one place, you're watching something that happened or is happening in another place. They can't see you. You can't see them. You're just watching. You're voyeuristic. You're just viewing. You go into like a beta state of inactivity where you're just kind of not even really like a fully conscious witness, right? When you're scrolling through. And I think that a lot of these young people are spending so much time on their devices. And we know that's true because there's so many. I mean, you don't even need a statistic or whatever. You don't need a study to know that these young people are on their phones all the time. And I think they're so used to reacting to things by like pressing a button that when something was going on in real life, they like didn't really know what to do except be like, ooh, ah, oh, get her, like they didn't have an embodied response, and they weren't in their minds. Like they really weren't. They totally surrendered their individual free thought like to the group. And it was really because you asked me earlier, was I scared? And I honestly, in that moment, I was like, my fear was like, oh my God, there are hundreds, thousands of people in this park and they're all brainwashed. They're all totally brainwashed. Like, how did we get to this point? That's what was scary to me, the level of programming.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point and a good one, which is, I think for so many of these people, they really kind of mostly just exist online. So they've created caricatures out of people in general, but they've certainly created caricatures out of so-called TERFs. And so I think, speaking of dehumanization, they have, of course, dehumanized us and dehumanized women like J.K. Rowling and women like Posey. The fear that feminists have around objectification and the dehumanization that comes along with it, which we see in pornography so much, for example, is that, of course, if you dehumanize someone, you are more, it's so much easier to perpetrate violence on them because you're not seeing them as a full human being with feelings, needs, fears, desires, so on and so forth.
Yeah, they were watching me like I was a video on a screen, and there was literally no humanity given to me in that moment. It was like I wasn't a person. It was just they were and I'm glad you brought up the pornography, because there was a hugely sexual aspect to everything that went on. And you know, these people were acting out not just violently but sexually, and you don't see a lot of it in the viral video, but like you can see a little bit of it. But I mean, I was surrounded, not only were people yelling at me and jeering at me, but at one point they started like everyone started shaking their asses on me, literally grinding their asses into my crotch and against my butt. I had two feminized men behind me, literally like working their butts under my butt to make my butt like bounce, like literally, like they were like trying to force me to have like a sexual like grinding scenario. I mean, seriously, they were all doing it around me, and it was like if you watch it like from the outside, even what you can see it, and with the sound off especially, like it is very reminiscent of like a gang sexual assault, the whole thing. And then another thing that people don't really know about and wasn't in the video, and I think I hope Redux is gonna share about it. I think they will, but after the scene that plays out and we're kind of trying to get away, as I start like trying to move through the crowd, like people start throwing stuff on me, and they're like throwing beer and wine and like you know, like mixed drinks and stuff. But right before that happens, a man pulls out a taser, and you can hear it like crackling on the audio, and everyone's like and like looks over, but not like don't hurt her, like whoa, shit just got real interesting, kind of like, right? And like I saw it and was like, okay, we need to get out of here right now, time to go.
So how did you get out of there?
Well, hold on, I want to say one thing about this guy is that he was holding the taser literally at his crotch and doing this with it, like he was jerking his penis. And in the video, that's what it looks like. He's like going like this. And as he does it, they're throwing the drinks on me. So he's like doing the masturbatory move, and it looks like, you know, I mean, my face is getting covered with random liquids from all directions. It's pornographic and it's gross. Yeah. And it was definitely sexually violent.
Totally. I mean, this reminds me a little bit too of what happened in New York at the event that Posey was meant to do that she wasn't able to do on account of the threat from the mob. But you were there, Kay, and you know, there were these men who were touching themselves during this like rage fest that they were having.
Yeah, you had the men like kind of grabbing their like estrogen, like fake like boobs, whatever, and then you had a female who identifies as a male bearing the double mastectomy, and then you had the man who reached over and pulled my hair and my head. He accosted Karen Davis. He can be seen on camera like jerking himself at her. It was very, very sick. So yeah, and then the other thing is, one of the chants that they were chanting in New York City was trans rights are human rights, which again, that's a direct line from the United Nations. Trans rights are human rights. Trans sex is better sex. Like they were literally chanting at us about how they have sex. I'm like, no one cares about your
No
sex
one's
life, bro.
interested. No one cares. No one wants to
No.
think about this. No one wants to see your body. I know it's so ironic because trans activists are always accusing us of being obsessed with their genitals. And in reality, the last thing we ever want to see or think about is their genitals. Like nobody's interested in your fucking sex life.
No.
So how did you two get out of there?
Well, it actually we walked away like more towards the arch from the fountain, because also here's the thing is after the scene of everybody like going crazy and stuff, and I was literally just like unyielding, like I wouldn't give in, I wouldn't give them what they wanted, and when they weren't getting it, there was like this even after they threw the stuff on us and everything, they weren't getting the reaction out of me that they wanted, and then it was like they're just throwing stuff on. I'm like literally just an innocent woman, and they were kind of like like what do we do now? Like what do we do? Like we spit on her, we kicked her, we hit her, we surrounded her, we called her names, we sexually assaulted her, we threw stuff on her, we threatened to tase her, and she's still not giving us the reaction we want. What do we do? And they kind of got like quiet. There was like a little bit like and then as part of how it de-escalated is there was like this Japanese man who was doing a he was like filming for his podcast, I think, and he was very concerned about like the whole time it was going on, and he was trying to like make room between like me and the other people, and he like came over and like started interviewing me. And that actually de-escalated and like sort of moved people away. And then people started listening to what I was saying to him. And he asked me for a statement about why I was there. And I gave this like little spiel. And people were like, oh, you know what I mean? Like they were like, now that they heard something that conflicted in what they thought and just kind of challenged what they were thinking, they were like I could visibly see people like questioning what they had just taken part of and what they had just watched as a bystander and didn't do anything. And then it also kind of de-escalated because, like I said, like a couple young men feminized men like came over, they wanted to talk to me. I was having a productive conversation with them, and then some young girls came over and they were trying to make me leave the park, and I was just like literally ignoring them while they like dance around, like waving the flag in my face, getting in between us, literally just ignoring them, continuously moving away from them. Then I told those guys like, hey, like these girls like really want me to leave and we can't have a productive conversation with this going on. So I'm going to go outside the park. If you want to come and talk to me, like I would love to keep talking about this. And then the girls who were trying to, they were pushing me and like waving the flag in my face, touching me with it, whatever. They hit one of the guys I was talking to, and he got mad and he was like, all right, now you just hit me. You know, and I'm like, oh, I'm
wrong target. It's her.
But he was like, you know,
this is getting out of control, people.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
I've been hit. But it was actually good because then he spoke up and said to that girl, like, you know, we're trying to have a conversation here and you all won't let us. And we have every right to stand here and have a conversation, and you need to get out of our faces. You know, and then they kind of got into a fight, and then I started like mediating them to stop fighting.
Oh my God. And they weren't just like putting flags in your face, but there were all these like merch, like trans merch, it was like a thong. It was like a rainbow
stamp
thong.
on your forehead.
It was like a rainbow bathing suit.
They were just grabbing random things nearby, like any object they could like dangle in front, and you know, like
look at it, look at the rainbow,
like right in front of your face. I find the whole
thing incredibly Dionysian. Like these women are just like whipped up into a frenzy around this like feminized male character. You know,
It's weird. It's weird. All the women who are like so obsessed and gung ho and frothing at the mouths to protect these men who don't give a shit about them at all. I mean, the depths of misogyny in this movement, it's just astounding. It blows my mind. And, you know, I've obviously been thinking about this and talking about this and covering this for a long time, but it just goes on and on and on, and it gets so dark. The, you know, the motherhood stuff that you mentioned, there was a comment from Sarah saying, we already tried the generation without fathers, now comes the experiment without mothers, which is so true. And there was a question from Gigi Gumdrop, which is, why do so many trans women want to embrace girlhood more than womanhood, which is something we were talking a little bit about earlier with regard to Dylan Mulvaney. But I mean, I think that part of it, at least, is that, you know, it's a misogynist movement and there's no respect for women, especially aging women. I mean, aging women are the least respected, most repulsive, you know, most invisible women in our culture, right? If you want to talk about dehumanization, marginalization, disrespect. I mean, the way that elderly women and aging women are treated in our culture is horrid and so clearly sexist. I mean, young women still believe and others believe that they have a form of power in their sexualities, which is really not about their sexualities, but about being desired by men. It's really about male sexuality, because young women are not, for the most part, super in touch with and connected to their sexualities. Even they're still at the performative stage, unfortunately. But I mean, maybe you two can respond to that question a little bit more if you have further ideas.
Go ahead,
Isabella.
Sorry, I went on a whole thought. Can you repeat the?
Oh yeah,
the
it was just.
based
I mean,
the
it was, why do
was
so many trans women want to embrace girlhood more than womanhood? Do you?
Well, I mean.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I think, well, if you listen to them, they'll say like, oh, it's because you got to be a girl and I didn't. And you got to go to slumber parties and like wear nighties and play like pillow fights with your girlfriends and paint your nails and I didn't. That's what they say. But I think it has more to do with the fact that they can't control women, but they think that they could control a little girl. So they can't control womanhood. Maybe they feel like they're more like they can play around with girlhood more. I also think because pornography, again, they're incredibly porn sick. And even though a lot of them are gay, I think that doesn't negate the fact that they're still, programmed to the sexualized imagery of like a young girl, because I think that type of imagery is being intentionally fed to all of us in the mainstream media, and they like to play with these sort of like pedophilic ideas because it's risque and they're interested in sexual excitement, and because they're so depraved, they need more and more extreme forms of sexual excitement, right? So I think pretending to be a little girl is absolutely pedophilic. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Like, why would you pretend to be a child and relate that to sexuality?
I mean,
there's something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing. Sorry, you go ahead, Isabella.
I was just gonna. I completely agree with the points that you made, King, and I'm also thinking like there's more of a uniform aesthetic to girlhood than there is to womanhood. You know, there's more. I mean, literally, like children are not free agents. They're completely dependent. You know, as we move into adulthood, we have more agency, and then I also think there comes a conflict with, just the maturation of the body, and the associations with womanhood, like birth. Like pregnancy, like abortion, like reproductive health issues. Yeah, the ugly things, and and there's like a there's a playfulness and more of a fantastical element with appropriating the girlhood. But yes, in a lot of the gender like propaganda that I was exposed to in college, I remember, oh my gosh, reading like memoirs of men talking about, just that they were robbed of the girlhood, that they wish they could have experienced that that's how they talk about it. And I think there is a, like, on some levels I can see that there's a sincerity to it, but really what the gay men at best, or what they're talking about, is like just not being victims of gender stereotypes. I mean, at best, that's like the I can maybe find like an ounce of sincerity in that desire, but it completely becomes obviously disgusting and pedophilic in like 5 seconds. And then like also the tutu, like, remember the guy in DC who would walk around the streets with the tutu? There's something about like child like costume that lends well to like erection for these like autogynephilic men. Do you remember that guy? He would wear a tutu because
I don't know.
he always had like an erection.
Ew.
So like there's something about the costume too that's able to mask what's going on underneath, because you never see these men like impersonating butch lesbians.
Right.
Never. I know all of this, like, we're fighting gender stereotypes and we're getting out of the gender binary, but most of these guys aren't dressing like how am I dressed? I'm like wearing sweatpants and I'm wearing a baggy t-shirt. Like, it's just, all they do is gender stereotyping.
And
I wear men's clothes all the time.
I just thought of one more thing. Like, children are able to get away with things. Like, children make mistakes. Children are outlandish. Children spill things. They hit. They kick. They whine. They scream. They do all sorts of other wonderful things. But children are, there's like something permissible about like,
right.
Like obviously a child in development, and I wonder if that. Yeah, like
you can't be held accountable for your actions because you're just a child, and you're perpetually innocent. Yeah.
He's always whining. His whole shtick is whining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's a perpetual victim, doesn't understand why everyone is so angry at him. He's just an innocent girl.
A mass social engineering project to indoctrinate young girls, who was the majority of his viewership was little girls.
Right, exactly. Of course, on TikTok. Who's on TikTok watching these videos? I mean, like, who is his audience on TikTok? Is it 50-year-old women? No, of course not. I think we should wrap this up soon. I know it's really late for you two. Thanks so much for joining. If anyone has any last minute questions, go for it. Otherwise, I wanted to mention that Christina in the comments wanted to invite us all and anyone watching to this protest that they're planning against the ACLU in DC, which is on August 11th at 10 a.m. And I asked her to post a link to more info in the live chat, but she wasn't able to do that. But I think, I think you could go to, usa.kpssinfo.org, which is the Keep Prisons Single Sex USA website. So I'll post that in the chat. And yeah, if Christina, you're still around and you want to post a link somewhere, that would be great. And what was the other thing that I was wanting to mention here? I don't know. I forgot.
While you're thinking of that, I will suggest to women, if you haven't already taken the Great Reset of Motherhood, Gender Identity, Transhumanist Tech, and the Theft of Motherhood, check out that class on whosebodyisit.com. It's very valuable information. We were only going to do 3 hours. It went 5 hours. It probably could have gone 10. But because there's just so much information to cover on this topic. And plus, it wasn't like we just did one topic. I did like an entire like resurrection of like the history of the last like I don't know how long, like 4,000 years, talking all the different industrial revolutions, going from one to the next, showing exactly how we got to where we are and where this is headed. Really, totally exposing the United Nations agenda. Totally exposing the artificial womb tech and how that's coming down the pipeline, and how the United Nations and the European Union are totally behind that. Surprise, surprise. So anyways, check out that class. And then also I'm really excited because the next, can I say who the next class is with? Is that?
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the
pre-sale is open. Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer Law is the next class, and awesome. I'm super excited for that. And maybe Isabella, you can describe it. Describe the class.
I feel like yours is like going into the you went like way back and like way forward, and like also what's going on now. But I think there's still such a huge gap in understanding the big fertility industry that's just targeting like fertile, intact women, let alone like outside of the gender industry. Obviously they're connected, but yeah, Jennifer Law is going to be, it's like the continuing ed class on third-party reproduction. You will not get anywhere else. You will not find this at a college. You will not find this at a midwifery school. You will not find this information in a doula training. I mean, literally she's been censored. She cannot teach her genius anywhere. So this is a class all about the medical and legal ethics of IVF, ART, surrogacy, and other lesser known forms of assisted third-party reproductive technology. So it's a series, it's 3 weeks, everything's recorded. And you won't find this information anywhere else.
No. That's why I love your classes, because you're not going to find it. And also the dedication from the women who create the content. It's like, you don't find that anywhere. So I'll be at the class. I'm super excited for it. I'm excited to learn from Jennifer. And I think it's so important for all of us to be learning from one another, you know, and not just assuming like, oh, well, I already know everything. Like I know it. I've been in this. Like, I don't need to hear any of that. Like, no, every time I go to one of those classes, every time, even just in this live stream, like I'm always learning from other women, like learning from the two of you. I think that we should really normalize learning from one another and appreciating the unique things that different women are bringing to the table, because none of us have all of the pieces of the puzzle, you know, we don't. And it's not that, oh, we have to always work together in perfect harmony. And like, obviously that's unrealistic, right? But we can still respect one another's work and learn from one another and be, you know, building each other up. That's why I really like, you know, doing the classes with Isabella. It's why I like coming on Megan's show. And I think every time, this is the third time I've been on the show, and last time was with Amy and before was with Isabella. So I like it because we kind of have like a group vibe, which is really fun.
Totally.
In a group, you know,
it's a really good combo. And exactly. I always learn so much from the both of you when I have you on. I mean, I've learned a lot from you in general, and it's just, I love having these discussions. And, you know, I've said this in just this stream. I think there's lots of things I'm still trying to get my head around. And this is such a huge, it's not just about these trans activists who want to alter their bodies or they want to identify as women. It's about so much more, and it goes so much deeper.
Yeah.
I remembered the thing that I wanted to mention. It was it's not important. I just found it interesting. It was a meme that I saw that was in response to Brianna's tweet around how nice Dylan is, which, I mean, who cares? Who cares? Yeah, right. Who cares how nice?
Like, who actually also knows this man? No one.
No one. Yeah. No one knows him. No one knows anything about. Like, that's weird, right? I mean, where did he come from? And why are you defending this person you know literally nothing about, that you've never met in real life? Maybe he's nice. Maybe he's not nice. You know, you don't know. And it doesn't make a fucking difference if he's nice. Or that says nothing about his moral character. It says nothing about his impact on the world. It says nothing about the project that he's involved in and this whole movement and the impact on people and women and girls. Again, you know, like, but yeah, who is there? Is there anybody who spends time with this man? Where are his friends? Why is he not spending time with anybody else? And where are his celebrity friends?
Mm-hmm.
Why is he always alone?
And this whole thing about being nice, like, who the hell said it was nice for you to get up and impersonate little girls, to give them self-esteem and body issues, to confuse them, to make them feel bad about themselves, to mock women? Like, who said that that was a nice thing? You know,
exactly. I know it's not. Yeah, it's a ridiculous thing to say. But the meme was, what first attracted you to an ideology that allows adult men to shower with young girls? Right? Like, that's what you're advocating, Brianna, and all of these other women who are saying, just be nice, just be nice. That's the result. That's the end result. That's what's happening already with naked adult men walking around in change rooms with little girls.
Anyway. Crazy.
Megan,
thank you for writing the Substack. I wanted to say, you all should go and subscribe to Megan's Substack. She wrote a really awesome article that talks about what happened to me, and it talks about what the Human Rights Campaign is doing, their whole thing of like the 2S LGBTQ plus community is under attack.
State of emergency.
State of emergency. And it's a really good article, and it kind of just juxtaposes this like ridiculous like state of emergency with the fact that, you know, they're completely ignoring violence against women. And go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that also the New York City Mayor Eric Adams said that all demographics are welcome at Pride. All demographics need to be heard at Pride, and that they were organizing all these safety plans so that there would be no violence at New York City Pride against anybody, any attendees or LGBT people. And that did not happen. I was completely ganged up and mobbed on, and I don't see any concern coming from the mayor, the governor, the New York City Pride people. I've called my local representatives, and I'll be calling them again just to let them know that this occurred, not necessarily because I think they can do anything about it, but just because I think people need to be aware that this is happening.
Right. And I mean, exactly. It's so important to note that all of these brave politicians and these NGOs who are coming out in defense of these LGBT, et cetera, people under attack have nothing to say when women are attacked. They never have anything to say when women are attacked.
They incited the violence. Like, I personally hold Mayor Eric Adams, Governor Kathy Hochul, the New York City Pride organizers. They are absolutely inciting violence against women by the culture and the climate that they've created, by saying things like no TERFs, by like allowing participants to say violent things about women, to use slurs against women. Cis is absolutely a slur. By the way, like how, like at this point we have the proof, and I'm sure there was other proof as well, but I was called a cis bitch and then immediately started getting kicked and hit by men. So I don't know what else to say. Like, it's absolutely a slur. It accompanies violence against women.
Right. Thank you so much to both of you for your time. I know you both are super busy. I know it's late for you. I really, really appreciate this. I'm so impressed by your bravery. I have linked to Isabella's site, which is whosebodyisit.com, down in the notes below. This is where you can find out about these courses that Kay and Isabella have been doing and have been talking about here. And Kay is on Twitter at StopXXErasure. Isabella is on Twitter at whosebodyIsit. Is there anything else you two would like to mention before we leave?
I'm on Instagram at the Deprogrammer XX. Of course, stopfemalerasure.com, the deprogrammer.com. If you have been moved by any of the work that I'm doing, you want to help me, you want to support me to be able to do more of it, you can donate to me. There's a link on my website. I would appreciate that because all the eyes that I've had on me and the support, like we talked about this a little bit yesterday, is about like there's all this support that we're getting, but it's in the forms of like a like and a click, which is really great and really helpful. But I have a lot of events coming up. I need to print posters, banners, stuff like that. If you want to help, that's how you can do it, or you can buy stickers. And yeah, otherwise, just I want to say thank you to all of the women who have left me messages of support for me and Isabella, who showed concern for my safety, who wanted to make sure that we were both okay. I really appreciate all of you. And Isabella, like, obviously I thanked you again privately, but I want to thank you publicly in front of everybody for having the courage and conviction to come with me, to stand up for what's right, and to do it in your own city. Like, I'm born in New York and have lived in the city on and off, but I'm not living in the city right now. You're actually living there right down, like very close to where we were. That takes a lot of guts, and I really admire your boldness. And thank you for being there with me. And Megan, just thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this issue. Like, I want everybody to know that when I was first waking up to this thing, I was like, oh my God, who's talking about this? And I found Megan and Feminist Current, and I was like, okay, like somebody's saying something. And she's like, not a right-wing bigot.
No, I am.
Oh, right.
Far right, as we
Now
established
I
earlier.
understand that, but
yeah, I had a similar experience. I had an absolute, well, not that I thought you were a right-wing bigot, but Feminist Current, you know, the podcast specifically was a huge source of comfort and information and learning. I learned so much from the guests that you interviewed and continue to interview. And yeah, thank you, Megan, for having us on, and thanks, Kayang, for being you. I wouldn't go to any protest without you. And yeah, thanks to everyone for being here for this conversation and for supporting our joint ventures and these conversations and everything.
Great. Thanks for that. And thanks again to everyone who came to the stream. Thank you for liking and subscribing and for supporting the work that Isabella and Kay are doing. Feminist Current, if you want to check out those podcasts, I mean, where are all the women? They're on the podcast at Feminist Current saying dangerous things and thinking dangerous thoughts at feministcurrent.com, and you can donate to support that as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.